In this video, I'm going to show you how to propagate a spider plant by layering its babies. So this is a spider plant. They were very popular on that NASA list again as a plant that would purify the inside of your home. They're very easy to maintain and care for and propagate. So a lot of people really like to have one of these in their homes. They work really well in a hanging basket because, as you can see, you've got all of these dangling pieces. Some of these are flower stalks, like this one here. But a lot of them end up with these new little propagules on these really long stems that are above ground stems that propagate themselves, so we're going to call those runners. There's a huge inner node in a lot of these. And at each of those nodes, you can potentially get a new pup, although it seems to tend to favor putting pups on tips. So the first thing that I would probably want to do with this plant is just go through and snip off whatever I'm going to want to work with. Sometimes people really like to have these long pieces. That's part of its charm and part of what makes it dangle. So you may not want to take all of these off if you want to keep some for aesthetics on the main plant. But when we do want to take them off, we can cut off pretty much this entire thing, or else you're just going to have this long stem with nothing on the tip of it. So here, let's take a look at this one. This one's got quite a few nice little pups on it, so I can just go ahead and clip that kind of towards the base of where it's coming out of the plant. And now I've got this really long piece with a couple of propagules on it. The propagules, in this case, this one doesn't really seem like it's starting to have any roots stick out of it already. That's okay, we could still propagate it this way. Some of them already have a little bit of roots coming out of that node. So those are going to be really easy ones to propagate because they already have something coming out of it. Let's go ahead and start with this one that has no roots coming though. We could do this two ways. Either we could just pop the propagule off, or you can clip it on either side so that you keep a little bit more node tissue intact. Either way is fine. I'm just going to peel it off. So I'm peeling and I'm tearing, and oh, it looks like I do have some little tissue there that may have been starting to work as a root. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean off any of these browning leaves. They're not going to recover. They're just going to take more energy from the plant. If your propagule is already starting to flower, like this one is, you're probably going to want to cut that flower off because we want it to put its energy into rooting and not reproduction. So I'm going to clip that off really low towards the base. And then I'm going to take a pot that I have. You can pre-drill a little bit. I would just only go pretty much as deep as the roots are though, because you don't want this to just mush in, and if you don't, you have to be very careful about this crown here. These are crown sensitive, and what that means is if you have too much of this piece buried, when you water it, it's going to rot that apical meristem and kill off your plant. So we just really want this kind of on the surface. And if it's really wobbly, you can take like a bent paper clip and jab it down on either side to hold it in place. You know, I'm going to go grab a paper clip and I'll show you what that's like. Alright, we're back with a paper clip. So this is one of the bigger size paper clips. You can use the little ones too if you want, but I tend to like the bigger ones. So we're just going to kind of unfold this paper clip, and then we're going to just make it a little plant stake like this. Okay, it's got this nice little angle on it, and I'm just going to take that propagule on the surface of the soil, and I'm just going to put this around the top of it, and that's just to hold it into place. It looks like with this paper clip it's probably hitting the limit of what my pot depth is, but that's okay. It's okay for this to wiggle around a little bit on the top. It'll root fairly fast. Let's do one that has a little bit more root on it already. So I'm going to cut this piece off from wherever it's coming out of the middle here. Oh, there we go. Alright, so here's another propagule, and this one does have some roots that are starting to come out of the base of it. Again, we can just kind of peel that off. Oh, there were two! Look at that, we call that a twofer. 2 propagules that were coming out of the same area. Same thing, we're going to grab our pot. We're going to just kind of barely dibble and just barely stick those roots underneath there. And then let's unbend the paper clip. Okay, so we're just going to go like this. This. Okay, now we've got our fancy propagation hook here. And just go around that stem on either side and hold it into place. There we go. Now it might wobble around in there a little bit, but it shouldn't fall out of the pot, and that should hold it in just enough so that you'll get some rooting. Lastly, of course, we need to make our label. This one was propagated, we'll say, on April 21st, 4/21. I do have one that we propagated about 6 months ago, and it was just from one of those little propagules, and this is what it looks like already. See, it's getting giant and full, and it'll probably start sending out flowering shoots and runners on its own soon. Here's what the roots look like coming out of the bottom of that pot. These will form big, fat, tuberous roots. Sometimes people wonder what those are whenever they're dividing this, because you can divide it as crown division, like when you're just sawing this chunk of the root ball. If you find things like this in your pot, whenever you're digging that out, don't be alarmed. These have tuberous roots, so these won't individually sprout unless you have a piece of stem tissue associated with it, but those are storage units that the plant uses to hold water and nutrients. That's one of the things that makes this plant extraordinarily drought tolerant and really good to have in your home. It's one of those plants that you just kind of forget about it and maybe water it like once a month. All right, so there you go. Propagating spider plants by taking off the pups or the little propagules that it's already made itself.